Welcome, everybody. Hello. Happy Monday to you. If you're listening on Monday, it's Monday for me and our live Zoom studio audience. This is Spirit Matters. My name's Dal Grunga, and I'm so glad to be with you. Thank you for giving us your time. We live in a world where time is so short in the sense that our attention is the hottest commodity in the world. And so wherever we choose, think about that. If somebody's giving you their time and attention, it means something because our time and attention is going all over the place. So the fact that you're taking a little bit of your time, your day to listen to us, tune in, try to input spiritual subject matters, it's a really, really beautiful thing. You should be proud of yourself, and you're on a beautiful journey, and you are not alone in that journey. In case you ever thought that you were. Anybody here ever feel a little lonely in their journey? Anybody ever wonder if it's just me? Am I doing this all by myself? I'm living out here in Oregon or Salt Lake City or Texas or wherever I might be on a Caribbean island. But the reality is you're not alone, because we are connected in the heart across borders. And that's why we're here. Spirit matters. You matter. We matter. We're all connected. This is your daily cough. It's your daily cough. Now that that's out of the way. It's your daily spiritual check-in with the Bhakti Center. We're going to start having guests on our show this week. Rukmini Podar, my very good and dear friend, one of my best friends, if not my best friend, Rukmini Podar, is going to be with us this week, but she's not here with us today. She's going to start tomorrow, the rest of this week. And the reason she's not here today is because today is Gaura Purnima, which literally means the golden full moon. It's full moon here. At least that's what they tell me. Astronomically, astronomy. That's the moon and the stars, right? So it's a big festival for Bhakti yogis, devotees of Krishna all over the world. And I'll tell you why in a second. So she's celebrating at her local temple in Florida. And so it's just me today. And I thought I would just share a little bit about the significance of this beautiful, wonderful day. The idea of God in Bhakti yoga and Vedic literatures in general is very vast and inclusive. The idea that even any of us, we have various facets to our personality, isn't it? Anybody here have, even amongst friends, there's a different side of you that comes out when you're around different people. When you're around your parents, when you're around your intimate partner, when you're around your kids, if you've got kids, when you're around your friends, when you're at work, when you're around different kinds of friends. And so none of us have flat singular personalities. There are different sides of us come out. I relate to different people in my life accordingly. And God relates to each and every one of us uniquely and individually. And God himself has unlimited names, unlimited aspects to his personality. There's even her personality. There's the feminine aspect of God. There's the masculine aspect of God. And Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, for those that aren't aware, is God who appeared in this world to demonstrate what it's like to live a life of bhakti. He's known as the Golden Avatar, and he appeared in West Bengal just over 500 years ago. And his example and his biographies are recorded in a number of books, one prominently known as the Caitanya Charitamrita. And I wanted to read a beautiful verse that talks about the wonderful qualities of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and read a little bit of read a quick story. It's a short little excerpt, and talk about how it really illuminates the heart of bhakti, so to speak. And because bhakti is not something that is just understood with the intellect, it is something that is experienced through the heart. I became a Krishna devotee when I was 18 years old. I dropped out of college. I shaved my head. I put on robes, and I moved into a temple, and I broke my mother's heart. Sorry, Mom. We have a great relationship today, and she's happy for me, and I'm happy for her. But it was really hard at that time for my family to just kind of observe the very drastic lifestyle changes I went through. And I went hard, I went deep. I did more than what your average person might, because I'm a little abnormal and a little crazy, and I go all in whatever I do. My wife is constantly trying to beg, can we just get a little bit of balance, like a little bit of walk the middle road? I'm always like all in or all out. I'll be loud and she'll be like, can you just quiet down? And then I'll just start to whisper. She's like, you don't have to whisper. You can just normal voices is okay. But I'm like either all one way or all the other. So when I decided I wanted to get into Bhakti, I just like directed my whole life and just dove right in. And all the philosophical conversations in the world, all of the explanations and the books and etc. Were ineffective in trying to pacify my family's concerns about what the heck I was doing with my life. And it wasn't actually until I eventually moved to New York, and my family flew out thousands of miles to come and visit me out here. And they met members of our community and had dinner at their home and spent an afternoon together, and was just moved by the personal hospitality and warmth and friendship and connection of individuals. No philosophy, no philosophical debates or explanations, just simple personal heart-to-heart connections. And to this day, I don't know if they still even know what I do, but there's an acceptance and there's an appreciation, because it's something that is not understood through the intellect, but it is something that is experienced through the heart. And so much of our experiences of Bhakti, yes, we can get into all this. That's why I'm not big in philosophical debates, because I don't think that even if we can convince someone of our point, if our heart isn't settled into something, then have we really gotten anywhere? And so Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the stories and the biographies and the interactions are all about what does it look like to live a life of bhakti in real time. And so there's this beautiful verse in his biography, in the third section of his biography, known as the Antilila, chapter 4, verse 84. I was listening to a class yesterday by my good friend Rasanath, and he was quoting this verse. So whatever I'm saying today is just sort of an extension or an echoing of what I learned and took from him in a class that he gave. And there's this beautiful verse that he read from one of the biographies of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and it was spoken by one of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's followers, whose name is Sanatana Goswami. And the verse says, originally written in Bengali, I'll just read the English. At that time, Sanatana Goswami said to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, quote, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. No one can understand the deep ideas you plan within your heart. No one can understand the deep ideas you plan within your heart. And the Bengali, Tomari Gambira Hridaye ke bhujite pare. Gambira Hridaye. Hridaya means heart. And Gambira is translated in a number of ways. It can be deep, intense, secretive. But another translation that he shared was sensitive. He shared this idea of sensitive, and the idea that a heart filled with bhakti is a sensitive heart. And sometimes in life we perceive sensitivity to be a weakness. Oh, you're just being too sensitive, or don't be so too sensitive, or you need to have thick skin, right? And there is a reality that what we sometimes perceive as sensitivity is a fragility of the ego, because the nature of the ego is to be fragile. The ego itself, the false ego, is fragile. And when someone challenges my ego identities, when somebody bumps up against my ego in a particular way, the nature of the ego is to defend. And there's two responses. One is that it gets agitated and it defends and it attacks, and it tries to just defend whatever's coming at it. And the other response sometimes is that we just shut down. We just shut down the heart and we put up walls and we close ourselves off to intimacy and exchange because we don't know how to handle or navigate the fragile cracks of the ego that go about. And because naturally the ego will get cracked as we move about the material world. Why? Because it's a false narrative. It's a false narrative. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. Ahankara vimudatma. The foolishness of the false ego. It's a false story. The living being, bewildered by the modes of material nature, thinks itself the doer of activities. I think I'm the doer. I think I'm in control. I think I'm X, Y, and Z. And if you just move through life, eventually we realize that the emperor is wearing no clothes. And so it's inevitable. It's inevitable, but the false stories of the ego become exposed. And so we either have a chance to open ourselves up to that reality. And if we don't have an alternate reality, then it's terrifying. Why would I? But if there is, it's not getting rid of ego, it's correcting the idea and repositioning ourselves to the real ego. Because I have a false ego, which I need to get rid of. I need to drop. I need to get over it. But it doesn't mean that I have no ego. I have a real ego. There's a real me that I need to discover. And so I'm really upgrading from a lower sense of self to a higher sense of self. And so when he talks about sensitivity, he's not talking about like the fragility of the ego and the idea of just like walking on eggshells and everything seems to bother me. But actually, when I move past the fragility of the ego and I become situated in my genuine self, a couple of verses later, couple of chapters later, one of my favorite verses from the Gita is in the 5th chapter, verse 24, where Krishna speaks, one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. They're liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately they obtain the Supreme. And Srila Prabhupada's first sentence comment on this verse, unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? I'll read that again. Unless one is able to relish happiness within, how can one retire, give up, put away with, trade in the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? So we need the higher taste in order to let go of the lower taste. And sometimes we get a little bit too excited when we start to experience a little bit of a higher taste in spiritual life and we start going home to our friends or to our family or to our coworkers, everyone we meet, you need to start giving up all this stuff. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Who said that they're ready to make these massive changes? Just because you've experienced a little bit of something, everyone's on their own timeline, and we need to respect that. And so that is the sensitivity of heart that's being spoken here, the Gambhira Hridaya in this verse that I was reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is that once we start to settle into our own depth of being, the judgments that we used to operate out of because of the fragility of the ego get replaced with sensitivity and compassion for all the other living beings. And a heart of bhakti is a sensitive heart that understands the time, place, and circumstance of everyone's journey and begins to relinquish judgment, begins to relinquish condemnation, and begins to take the time and consideration to be sensitive and aware of everyone's journey and how bhakti applies in a given circumstance. And we become less attached to the rigidity of making sure that we are catching someone in the aha moments. Aha, see, you didn't follow this rule or regulation or whatever it might be, and be able to fan the spark of everyone's sincerity. Because love is never completely straightforward. sometimes people ask me, my wife and I have been married. This summer will be 9 years married, 10 years together total, which isn't a long time and isn't a short time either. And so just yesterday, every now and then somebody I know who's newly in a relationship was asking, like, do you have any advice? People say, do you have any marriage advice? And I'm like, I'm still figuring it out. But what I do usually say is that you have to set aside expectations, that no two relationships are going to look exactly like each other. And one of the biggest holes you can dig yourself into is the idea of like, this is what normal people do. This is what normal couples do. Or this is what so-and-so couple's relationship is like. Or you look at somebody else and you think it's supposed to look like that, or supposed to look like my parents, or not supposed to look like my parents, or like my friends, or everyone else is doing this. Why can't we? And the reality is that every single living being is unique. And when two unique people come together, that relationship is also extraordinarily unique. And you need to be able to adjust according to the ever-changing circumstances of two living beings who are constantly evolving and changing and adjusting. Because the rules of engagement that may even be now may change some years down the line, because I used to be super outgoing and adventurous and love to go on vacations. And now I'm a homebody and I like to just stay home, or vice versa. Or I didn't want kids before, now I do want kids. Or I used to have great health, now I don't have great health. Or I used to look a certain way, now I look a different way. And it's like, we have to just constantly fall in love with a person as they're changing and evolving. And I think Bhakti operates the same way. Bhakti operates the same way, where we have to be able to extend compassion to our spiritual family as we all make our way towards reawakening our divine self. So there's one little story I wanted to read. And I know I feel like maybe a little all over the place sharing here and there. But really what I'm trying to do is appreciate Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu on his appearance day, and as well as highlight a critical aspect of bhakti, which is the sensitivity of heart. And I want to distinguish that sensitivity of heart from just the fragility of the ego, which many of us have, that the defensiveness and the fragile nature of the ego is not what's being referred to here. But when we move past that, and we don't just shut down the heart, bhakti is not just a dry renunciation of shutting down the heart, but it's coming in touch with our real selves that awakens compassion and sensitivity, that we become attuned. We become attuned very deeply to others. We become very, very deeply attuned to others. And so there's a beautiful story. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was in the later years of his life a sannyasi, which means he was a lifelong, he took this lifelong vow of renunciation and celibacy and was a monk. And he was living in this town of Jagannath Puri, where there's a very big famous temple of Lord Jagannath. And in text 22 of this chapter of this biography, it says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his customary daily duties. And at the usual time, he went to see Lord Jagannath in the temple. As he viewed Lord Jagannath from behind the Garuda column, it's this column that stands in the back of the temple room, hundreds and thousands of people in front of him were seeing the deity. So massive crowds of people were coming in to see the form of Lord Jagannath in the temple. Suddenly, a woman from Orissa, unable to see Lord Jagannath because of the crowd, climbed the column of Garuda, placing her foot on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shoulder. So picture the scene. This woman in this massive crowd of people couldn't see the altar. So there's this Garuda stamba, this column of Garuda, Garuda is the order, the carrier of Lord Vishnu, in the form of an eagle, a massive bird. And so, he's revered in the form of this column in many temples. And so it's sort of a sacred landmark. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was revered in his time and was also a sannyasi. He was a monk. And this woman, trying to see the altar in the crowd, climbed on top of this column and placed her foot on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shoulder in order to get a footing. Now, in any setting, that would be a little rude. And particularly in this setting with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was very taboo, to say the least. So that's the scene. Next, text 25. When he saw this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal servant, whose name was Govinda, hastily got her down from her position. So he got her down and said, don't do that. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, chastised his servant for this. He said to Govinda, "O Adivasya," translated as uncivilized man, "do not forbid this woman to climb the Garuda Stamba. Let her see Lord Jagannath to her satisfaction." Text 27. When the woman came to her senses, however, she quickly climbed back down to the ground and, seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, immediately begged at his lotus feet for forgiveness. So she was in this craze of eagerness to see the deity. And afterwards she came to and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." Seeing the woman's eagerness, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Lord Jagannath has not bestowed so much eagerness upon me. She has fully absorbed her body, mind, and life in Lord Jagannath. Therefore, she was unaware that she was putting her foot on my shoulder. Alas, how fortunate this woman is. I pray at her feet that she favor me with great eagerness to see Lord Jagannath." Jagannath means Lord of the universe. It's a name for the supreme being who is the Lord of all. And so here's a situation that in many ways highlights the sensitivity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart and this Gambhira Hridayam, this sensitivity of heart that it is at the heart, no pun intended, of a devotee of bhakti, that culturally, according to society norms, what took place was extraordinarily inappropriate. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he was exhibiting this deep heart, was able to sensitively apply and actually understand the purity and the devotion of this woman, and understood that actually she is just overtaken by eagerness to see Lord Jagannath. Bhakti Tirtha Swami, the late Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who passed away from this world from cancer about 15 years ago, used to make this prayer that, may I become hijacked by the Lord. This idea that I don't want to live according to the dictations of my mind and my senses, but may I be guided divinely at all times. There's another story, an anecdote about a great sage meditating in the forest. And he was sitting in silence and solitude, and he's an elderly man with many years of meditation under his belt and respected in his community, and was just alone meditating in a forest. And there was a young girl, a girl, not a young girl, a young woman, and a grown young woman running through the field that he was meditating in, and not noticing him at all, just literally just barreled through this old man. She was in such a hurry to get somewhere. She didn't even notice him. She ran into him, knocked him over, didn't say anything, and just kept going. And this sage was so disturbed, what the heck just happened? So how rude and inconsiderate. And for hours, he couldn't get it out of his head, and he disturbed his meditation, and he was just, brewing over it. all day. And several hours later, this young woman came kind of strolling back casually, not in a hurry. And this sage saw her and was just like, excuse me, do you have anything to say to me? And she's like, I'm sorry, do I know you? And he said, just a few hours ago, you were running through here and you knocked me over and you didn't even say anything. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was running to see my intimate lover who I hadn't seen in a very long time. And we were meeting someplace just down the road. And I was in such an eagerness that I just wasn't aware of anything else. And I must have just run into you and then just kept going. And I'm so sorry. And the question at the end of it was who was more absorbed in their meditation? Who was more absorbed in their meditation? Um, and so we actually have more to learn from that young woman, that if I can develop that type of eagerness towards Krishna, towards the divine couple of Radha and Murlidhar, Radha and Govinda, that's the type of eagerness I want. That's the type of absorption that I want. That we all have some sort of eagerness and absorption for so many things in the material world. If I can just dovetail, bhakti is not about eliminating my attachments and my desires and my fixations, but it's about dovetailing them, and that shifting the focus and attention towards something else, towards someone else. And it's never always straightforward. We should see the sincerity of every living being. We should be slow to jump to conclusions. How quickly do we jump to conclusions? We get a little piece of information and then people just pile on the assumptions and the condemnations and the criticisms. Social media is a cesspool for this. Somebody sees a photo, somebody makes a statement, somebody comes to some conclusion and puts it on social media, and then comment after comment just kind of piles on, and it just becomes a cesspool of judgment and criticism of people who don't even have the full story of something. We should be careful. We should be very careful the way we judge, the way we condemn, the way we criticize, because our heritage, our spiritual heritage, all the way back to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu himself, is one of sensitivity and understanding and grace and moving towards inclusion. And so, and at the same time, and we can speak a whole nother episode about this, yes, we do have rules, we do have standards, we do have rules of engagement. A lawless society is unsafe. And so we do have to have accountability, and we do have to have high levels of communication. But we need to do it with this sensitivity of heart to make sure that we are not closing ourselves and other people down. Because yeah, that is the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. Hare Krishna. That's all I got for today, guys. We don't have Kimberly here. She's our Wrap It Up Acharya. This is the last week that she won't be here, but she's going to be joining us again next week. So I need you guys to help me out with whatever takeaways. If you guys got takeaways here in the chat, please go ahead and put them in. Stephanie wrote beautifully: develop patience, seek to understand before speaking or offering criticism or quote unquote our perspective. Yes, I love the idea of patience. And I think that that's something which is really hard, that I think maybe is my takeaway as well. The idea of, can I be slow? Can I be quick to, can I be slow to react? Can I be slow to react and quick to offer compassion and understanding? And anytime there's like a jolt of reaction, can I learn to sit with that a little bit longer and ask questions, and make sure that I'm well situated in my heart before I move on to condemn and judge other people? Martha, that's the phrase. Yeah, quick to listen and slow to speak. Thank you for that. Thank you. So, wherever you are in the world, I wish you a very, very happy Gaura Purnima. We've been celebrating for a couple days here in New York at the Bhakti Center, and we have a little festival again this evening. And make sure you take a look at the beautiful, bright full moon today, wherever you are, if it's shining for you. And may that full moon always shine in your heart, and may you carry it with you. Please tune in tomorrow. We have our good friend Rukmini Poder coming to talk to us this week, and we'll have a beautiful conversation with her. I love you guys all a lot. Thank you so much. Please take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.